Hi, the Brisbane Broncos are 11-9. Oh no, after losing to the Melbourne Storm 22-2, and it was an absolute disaster within 21 minutes at Amy Park, with Adam Reynolds and Ezra Mam going down with hamstrings on the same play. The club has since announced that Reynolds is expected to be gone for 4 weeks, then Ezra Mam and Selwyn Cobbo both for 6 weeks. And checking the schedule with 4 games left in the regular season, is it bad to lose both your halves for at least that amount of time? But the Lion does not concern himself with the lengthy injuries to 2 of the most important players on the team. And the Broncos might have been robbed of their season, and we'll talk about that, and I don't agree with it, but I also think we were all robbed of a great game of football. Those first 20 minutes were wild. The Storm came out of the blocks flying. They attacked the Broncos pretty relentlessly early. Broncos held their own, but Grant Anderson still made an early line break, which turned into an error through Meaney. Grant was getting out and running early, made 50 or so meters pretty quickly, but the Broncos were still doing a good job of not containing them, but withholding them in desperation, and the worm was beginning to turn. After taking a punch and staying up, they were building their own pressure. They went short on a dropout and gained possession. They never do that. They were composed and balanced, and Katoni Staggs very nearly open scoring on a kick chase. Then Walsh and Carrigan both have try-saving tackles on their end, and suddenly Haas is away and Walsh gets pulled up for a forward pass, and can I just say, really? I think a lot of these calls are being made on reputation rather than reality, because there have been some forward passes that have gone uncalled by Walsh in the past. Some of them pretty egregious, but it feels like they're keeping a very tight leash on Walsh in particular, and I'm not convinced that pass wasn't backwards out of their hands. But also there was a one-on-one coming between Cobbo and Anderson. We're about to have a football moment, and as someone who tunes in as a referees fan, I was glad to see that play pulled up before it could develop. Thank you, Grant Atkins. It reminds me of a few years ago in the NBA, there was a crackdown specifically on Jordan Poole for palming violations when literally everyone does it all the time. There was another forward pass call on Walsh later in the game that I also thought was very touch and go. Something you see every game, but of course, I'm stalling. I have to talk about the reason that I procrastinated writing this whole thing, the whole losing a halfback and 5'8" to the same injury on the same play. One where the Broncos had put together a good couple of sets in a row and Melbourne had given up a 6 again on their own line on 5th tackle, something they never do. And it's a really great passage of play developing for the Broncos. Then Xavier Coates creeps up and Ezra Mam sees the space, and from there, it's tragedy. If Mam goes to Katoni, he can go through the hands to Mariner and potentially they score, or he can dummy and go himself. It's only tackle 3, but I get the decision behind the pass, and this is a team completely unafraid of going for it on tackle 3, something they've been successful at all season. It just happens that Coates is too tall and athletic. While Selwyn Cobbo bravely chases down Xavier Coates, resolving my concern that Cobbo isn't actually fast because he once got chased down by Tom Dearden, but now he must be if he can chase down Xavier Coates. It's just a play that the Broncos want back. It's girls with a time machine. I am your granddaughter. Cool. Boys with a time machine. Ezra Mam, don't throw that pass. He's too tall. And yeah, that's tough and it's basically game, but I don't think it's season. Sometimes in these videos we find excuses for a loss or an explanation or blame. I'm always a fan of blame. And in this case, a whole lot of it can be put down to the excuse of losing 2 key playmakers 21 minutes into the game. So this video is just a short one. Don't check that. One more note on this opening stretch. On the 9 commentary, Billy was saying that the Broncos had been very conservative in the opening few minutes of the game, like last week, how they were conservative attacking the line 3 times in their first 2 sets. Then JT gives his sideline commentary and says, actually they're building their game, putting their sets together, exploring options, testing matchups, and while I disagree with Billy Slater on this, I'll admit, as we saw through Origin, that he has forgotten twice as much as I know about football. He's a football genius, and I am a guy who is being left on red by the Fox Sports editor. So I can't really say that he doesn't know what he's talking about or I have a better opinion, but I appreciated JT coming over the top and saying stuff that I agreed with. It was very, be quiet, fullback, a real game manager is speaking. 4th best player of all time giving number 12 a shush. Anyway, there's no need to start conservative or build the game anymore. We're in desperation mode. The Broncos need to win the rest of the way because there is a way. I see a narrow way that not only does the season stay alive, but thrives, by which I mean I've been going insane on the ladder predictor. And if the Broncos win all of their remaining games and Penrith lose at least 2 of their matchups against the Raiders, Storm, or Bulldogs, that gets Brisbane into 4th. Tank a week 1 game for a 2nd round home final. Mam recovers a week early to play that game, and we all pop down to the Caxton for a pint and celebrate a job well done. In the real world, they can stay in the 8 if they go 2-2 to finish the season, provided that the Roosters lose to the Dogs and the Storm, which is certainly possible. Also, huge thanks to the Dragons for beating the Sharks to make the Broncos' endeavour a whole lot easier, and it would be very appreciated if Cronulla would continue to suck. But that doesn't mean that beating the Dolphins next week isn't hugely important just from an identity perspective and getting reps into a new halves pairing, whoever that will be. And before moving on from this Storm game completely, some final notes. I think that they handled themselves pretty well, all things considered. Haas and Carrigan were immense, both of them. Ricky also had a really good game. He had some excellent runs before it all fell apart. Finished with 159 meters, and normally when Jordan cracks a ton, great things are happening around him. Hunt was excellent, especially defensively. Walters came on and played really well for his longest stint in quite a while, and Staggs and Walsh were also very good. And all of that is a very encouraging reminder that amongst all the grief, there is so much talent on this team, and the fullback, prop, lock, center, hooker, and utility are all in good form. Surely that's enough to carry them for the last month. Let's do the 3-2-1 early for the sake of maintaining the tally. 3 goes to Haas, 2 to Carrigan, and 1 to Jordan Ricky. Ticker gutless index, I'm giving a team-wide exemption. Being out there and competing took plenty of ticker, even if the performances were lacking in some positions, mostly the role players. But there was still a moment between the meanie no try, which came from this team still not learning the lesson they should have learned after the 2023 grand final to literally never go short on a dropout, and the coach try that gave me hope that they could have come back against the Storm. There was a point they had the ball in the Storm's half after the difference had jumped on a Pappy error, then Ben Hunt was getting to work at 7. And he gets out to go right and gave the ball to Jack Gashevsky, who puts it down as he's trying to stay in bound, keep the play alive, and get the ball out all at the same time. And none of that works, and that was very reminiscent of Dragon's Hunt. That a bit of luck and effort combines for an opportunity which ends up in the hands of a guy who is playing out of position on the other side of the field from where he originally started in the game when he's come in as an injury replacement in the first place. And from that point, the Broncos kept trying. They had opportunities through Sheba and Mariner, but weren't able to turn that into points, and it becomes their first game without scoring a try in 4 years. And I know there's a bit of anti-Gashevsky movement after this game, and he played a shocker, 2 errors, 2 penalties, a ruck infringement, and now finds himself on report. But I think it was just a symptom of the wider positional reshuffle that came after the disaster. And the Storm were always going to run Eli Katoa at him, and they didn't get the chance. So when Pappenhausen sees him where Katoni Staggs should be, he's making a beeline for him, and he's going to score every time. Gashevsky's played a lot of good football this year, mostly on the edge, but his real spot is 17, and I'd be happy to see him back there with Piakura hopefully returning next week. And now the real question, what are they supposed to do for a 5'8"? Replacing Reynolds is easy, Ben Hunt slots straight in, and then I think Karapani over Arthurs for Cobbo's spot because of the way that Arthurs has fallen apart defensively. And on that left edge where the new 6 is going to operate, having a guy like Karapani who's very good at holding his position is preferable. So options, there's 3. Maintaining the status quo, taking a risk, and going absolutely insane. But first, some stuff to rule out. Walsh can't move out of fullback and there's no one who could replace him there. I also think that moving Staggs out of centre, while he could definitely do a job at 5'8", and giving him more opportunities to get out and run at 6 would be incredible. And it also reminds me of Justin Hodges coming into fullback to replace an injured Carmichael Hunt in 2006. The move just has too many consequences defensively for that edge. Staggs is the center of that defensive edge around which all the other spokes rotate. He's the decision maker that everyone responds to, and he's in some of the best form of his career. So moving him creates disruption at 2 different positions, which I think should be avoided. I don't mind Josh Rogers' game, but he can't defend at NRL level, so I think all of those options are non-starters. So here we go. Option 1, maintaining the status quo. Keep it in the current roster and make Billy Walters the 6. Bring Corey Pakes back into 9 and Smoothie onto the bench. So it's returning a guy into the starting 9 who's played there a bunch already this season and moving a different playmaker into 6. Probably the lowest risk option, the highest floor, but maybe not the highest ceiling. And in Billy, the team has a guy who knows the attack, who understands where everyone is supposed to be, who plays with plenty of ticker and has been one of the best performing players in the last month. It's also probably the most likely option. This is definitely the best option defensively outside of Katoni, and considering how easily teams have scored against the Broncos left edge at times this season, having Billy there helps to keep them in the good form that they've had recently. Option 2, bringing in the boy, show me Kobe Black. The kid is good. He's as good as everyone says. He's got an absolute cannon of a boot. He's been part of the squad for the last 2 years, and they're bringing him along to be ready to take over from Reynolds in 2027. This is probably the highest ceiling option because if Black fires, the attack gains another dimension that the others probably can't bring, but I don't think that's exactly needed. Kobe hasn't been a turnstile in Q-Cup, but he is 19 years old and hasn't grown into his man body yet, and the age is a worry. There's probably not too many situations with higher stakes to debut a 19-year-old half into, so much that it goes wrong, it could set back all the time that they've spent developing him. I can talk myself into it, but I don't think it's happening. The third option, the insane option, is one I've pushed, being bringing Milford up, which is apparently possible because the Broncos have enough injuries that they can go outside the top 30 that they had on June 30, and this has a whole lot of narrative to it. If it works out, there's a built-in redemption arc of the 2015 halves reuniting 10 years later and keeping the ship steady into the finals, handing it back to the new halves for the final stretch with a pat and a treat her right. She's a good one. Also, definitely the lowest floor of all the options. Actually, I'm wrong. There's a fourth option. The Broncos commit corruption, extortion, fraud, uttering, whatever it takes to suddenly produce out of nowhere a contract from a 14-year-old Sam Walker that says, I agree to play for the Broncos no matter what, and Abdo clears it. There's the delusion coming back. But at the end of the day, I think what will matter more than who the Broncos bring in to play 6 will be less important than the fact that they still have 3 of the best players in the world in Haas, Carrigan and Walsh. That's an unstoppable physical presence who makes a mockery of the preconceptions of what a forward can be, who can't be tackled by a single man, who has no regard for how a defense prepares to stop him. Another guy who is the greatest combination of playmaking, defensive ability and ball running that we've seen not only in the sport but on God's green earth. And they've got the single greatest game-breaking force in the sport who is running 100 miles an hour, who draws the eye of every opposing defender simply for the fact that he's on the field, who can read and react faster than they can think how to contain him. That's the trio that everyone else on the team needs to keep up with. And hey, lump in a guy that doesn't need anyone to set him up for him to go 60 meters with the ball, who sees an outside shoulder and pays no mind to the man who it belongs to, and who defensively gives his man absolutely nothing. And their run home contains one team of equivalent talent, being the Storm in the last week, who might be resting anyway. And what right does anyone have to doubt the Broncos? It's Haas, it's Carrigan, and Walsh's team now that Reynolds isn't around. Carrigan is 27, Haas is 25, Walsh 23, and they're all rep players. Potential is over. This is their moment, but the team is still written off and doubted. Season over. They're still absolute freaks across the park. And what are they prepared to do about it? These are the future legends of a legendary club that has been let down too many times by players not seizing the moment, by Ashton Sims passing for no reason, by Jared Beale breaking Lockyer's jaw, by the current team not being able to put away a grand final, 2 grand finals. And this is their chance to change that, to kickstart a run into the finals, to seize the great form that they've all been playing with and bring the rest of the team up to meet them, to give them a chance at getting the other guys back. And Walsh, Haas, Carrigan, Staggs, Hunt, and whoever is enough. So do it. The time to speculate and give in to maybes is over. It's time for the team with the highest ceiling, if they can only put it together. Put it together. Win 2 games and you're in. So win 4 games, why don't you? Or will this team do the thing that it always does when it's challenged and just fall apart? No. Go out there and prove that things are different now. Win 4 games of football. Be the difference. Billy Walters, win us a comp! Sorry for raising my voice. I don't like doing that. But it's been a big weekend, so how does this all land? I don't know. We'll see on Tuesday. I've been listening to a lot of West Side Gun. Boom, 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 boom! All right, bye. Sorry for yelling.